It's like a tutorial. Yeah, it's a little bit more intense than the Dash program. Let me see if I... Sometimes I consider doing that in this class, breaking it down. Memory again. Functionalization. So you build something like this, you know, header, instructions, and, you know, you jump down in instructions, you jump down to the game section. That's the game. Oh, I got to reset the game. All right. So you won that one. You didn't win that one. All right. That's the game. And so there's tons of, like, you know, if you look here, here's the footer, right? The footer's like down here, right? Not a lot there. Here's mean. Here's the game board, but you don't actually see any elements in the game board. Here's the message of you winning or losing. There's the instructions. So how do you get those cards into the game board? And then, so the cards are stored in this as objects. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one of these is an object inside of an array. These are just storage containers. We'll go into this. And then there's like functions to check if you match. There's a function to flip the card. There's a function to create the boards, looping over, we call the function. So in a nutshell, that's the game. And they walk you through how to build everything and explain everything in detail as to what you're doing. We'll be doing stuff like this. These are creating elements. But we're going to do it in jQuery because doing it in plain JavaScript isn't as intuitive as doing it in jQuery. And at this level, like your skill set level, jQuery is the tool to use versus plain old JavaScript itself. Like jQuery was meant for people to get up and running with JavaScript and start building out things and adding animations and transitions and functionality. So I might actually consider trying to incorporate that into the class. jQuery is a JavaScript library. We're going to learn all about jQuery, all about the good times. All right. So, let's see, got Maria. All right. I think Heather is out sick, but she's going to be online. So if you do have questions, you can connect with her. But she wasn't feeling well today, so. Got my Zoom link, final project. All right, so a couple of things here. The final project material. All right, so I got a submission, my very first submission thus far from Andre. He's not here, would have been nice, for the wireframes. So, final project mockups. This is to Pinterest. I had shown you the Pinterest the other day. So, you know, send me your mockups. You know, if they're good mockups, we can put them up here. If you don't want them up there, I'll take them down. But he just sent this today. And so this is what I would be considering a mockup. It doesn't have to be this professional tool. If you come from UX, then you know that there's a bunch of tools that you can do to like mock things up and make them look like on point. This isn't a UX class. This is just like a front-end class where you're learning all these tools. So paper and pen and marker is good enough. If you want to come in early and use these whiteboards, use the whiteboards. You can go upstairs to the 4th floor also. There's like whiteboards everywhere along the hallway. Grab a pen. Just draw some stuff and write some notes. So he's doing something about hostels, right? And so he's got his body here, he's got a logo, he's got a main content here, an H2 with an image, some div with booking. I don't know what that is. Like, is that just a button? Like, he knows what it is. It says div booking, but I don't know what's inside of the booking. Unless that's going to be the booking, I don't know. Then there's a section, section 1, section 2. Doesn't have anything in it. There's no real content, just a visual display of what he's looking to do, and then a footer, right? With a few things, social media icons, info contact. Then maybe you go further into it. Maybe you click on booking. This changes to this, check in, check out, phone, email. That's it. That's enough to kind of get you started, right? It's got structure to it. Maybe you look at this and you start going, where am I going to do flex box? Where am I going to do grid? Right? Something like that. And so you could probably say, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe that's grid. And this is certainly flexbox. That'll be flexbox. Maybe this will be flexbox also. 2 elements in here. Both could be flex 1. Okay? So when you look at it, try drawing that out too. You can do this all on the train. As much of the drawing, I'm showing yours. Okay. As much as you can draw and work out mentally and write down, it'll make it easier when you build this out. Really easier to build stuff out. Okay? I only say that because, building anything out, going back and refactoring things takes time to do. Let me see. I was working on something earlier. I think I closed it. I just wanted to show you what I was working on. Is it here? You see, go along. Open a dashboard. Yeah, I was, helping my girlfriend build out a little Pinterest, is it Pinterest? No. She grabbed to Instagram posts, and so she wants to create them from scratch. She doesn't know really any coding. Took my few class a year ago, doesn't remember anything. What's a div? What's a span? But you lose this stuff, right? It's if you don't practice it. I'm there. You can ask me anytime, and I'll be like, oh, sit down. This is span. This is a div. Like this is what they do, and like show examples. But you lose it really quickly. So this is a way for us to kind of get up to speed on the material and just build something simple like that. But today I was going back and kind of refactoring some of this code. Like I had, instead of this div, I had image tags there. It was just the image themselves, like the URLs were so big like this that they just took too much space, kind of mucked it up. So I took them out and I put divs in there. I put a header to surround them so I could use Flexbox. Originally I didn't use Flexbox, but then I turned Flexbox on. These are just the 2 images, 2 trees in this. And then I turned Flexbox on, and it just took a little bit of time to get it going. I had to add a section. Originally, I think it was just an article and these 3 elements. And so I started to add additional structure to it as I saw the necessity. Oh, I want to do Flexbox. So now Flexbox should be a parent container. So I got to put it in a parent container. So I had to layer on things, right? It was easy enough to do it, but it messed up some styling. I had to go back and fix some styling, fix some things. I think originally I didn't have box sizing border box. So the width, the defined width was not just the width, but it was the width with the padding. So as I was setting something else to be wide, I was like, why is it smaller than this thing? And then the minute I added box sizing border box, I noticed the difference. And so, oh man. So these are things you go back and you're like, oh, I wish I could change as you approach it. So doing little simple things like this, takes time, and then designing it and doing first of types to grab each span, each letter, like just designing it out, This was like the 3rd iteration. We did it the first time and it was ugly, but it got it done. But I looked at the HTML and I was like, I'm a little confused. I don't really know where the spans begin and end. There's spans with nested spans. And I was like, so confused. And then I just decided this looks more intuitive. Right? Paragraphs to split up things, spans to target individual words, right? So, I just wanted to show you that. Can start with a design, you draw it out, and then you figure it out in your head. Oh, I think spans maybe work, right? It's easier to do. You can always go and take a look at all of the other posts that I have here. Was it like pins? I don't really know. A few mock-ups. There's a few. There's only, 4 in here right now? Yeah, 5. So as you show me some, I'll try to add a few in here. I definitely have more. I just haven't gone around to adding them. I just started doing that last class, trying to keep track of things so I can start collecting things. Sweep. Just see. Okay. So, final project material. The other thing that we're going to be doing, class projects, copyright, is setting up our project. So, kind of went over the wireframes, right? Check what's kind of expected. What I also want you to do is in CodePen. CodePen has, so everyone go to CodePen. Open up CodePen. Let's go to CodePen. okay? With a free CodePen account, right? You can make as many CodePens as you want. There's really no limitation to the amount of CodePens. But they also have this project. As a free CodePen account, you can create one project. And what that project is, oh, I have to upgrade my plan. I ran out of my 10 projects. I'm going to delete. Let me go to my projects. Let me go to my projects. I'm going to wind up deleting this final project so we can create it. Let me just make sure there's nothing in there. All right, I was just adding some stuff. No biggie. We can delete it. You can create, it's not going back, come on. Dashboard, projects, I'm just going to delete this so I can create a new project. So what I have to do, watch the words, delete project. Type the words, delete project. Right? They don't want you accidentally deleting things and going in here and be like, oh my God, my project's gone. Now I have other projects here. I don't want these things to get deleted. These are like my D3 projects. And in projects, we can create a new project, okay? So in projects, you should have something like this right now, right? If you opened up CodePen, you went to projects, that's what you should see, correct? I'm gonna do here, inside projects in CodePen, okay? Thumbs up. Just click on the thumbs up. When you're inside of here, don't click on anything, just go inside of it. I want to make sure everyone is in it. I just posted in the Slack channel. Just click on the little thumbs up. Let me know that you're inside that. And then we'll go ahead and create our project. Yep. Oh, go to projects right here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah. It should allow you to create, right? You can go make one. Like once again, I have a pro account. It's like, I don't know, $9 or something. I might even upgrade it even more because I want more projects. So in there, if you click on that button to create, right, or create, is that what it says? Create a new one. All right, then you should be here. Create a new one takes you to this page. And with projects, you can spin up a project based on particular templates. Like here, it's like, hey, if I wanted to create some sort of JavaScript library homepage. I've never gone into that template. I don't really know what it is. I either go into here or here. But there's other one, a multi-page site with Pug. Pug is a templating engine. React. Want to learn React? You can spin up React. Angular, React Profile, Vue. Like both of these two are kind of the new way to do front end. So we could build any one of these things that we want, right? Now, if I go to each, I'm going to go to it. Don't go to it because I want to make sure that this is the one that I want because I always get confused between the two. So that's not the one that I want. There's too much stuff here. I don't want that one. I'm going to go back. I want this basic HTML5 structure. I'm going to click on it. It's going to generate it. Should create it. I don't know why it's taking so long. I'm going to refresh my page because I don't think it should take that long. I think maybe because I'm going to delete this. Okay, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to do it one more time. I think because it thinks I have the project, it's still here. All right, delete the project. All right, I'm going to go back to projects. All right. Should have not. I'm going to create a project. All right, I'm going to go back here and create this thing. All right, this is it. Really basic thing, right? Contains only a styles, scripts, and an index HTML. That's all it is. Now, what we've been working with in CodePen, right? There's 3 sections in CodePen, and those 3 sections represented our HTML section where we would be writing all our HTML. We had a CSS section where we would be writing CSS. And now we also have a JavaScript section where we will be working in JavaScript. This is going to be for your project, and since you can only open one free CodePen project, we're not going to be using projects in class to like as labs or anything because you only have one free one. Yeah. You can use any text editor you want. The reason why, if it's a CodePen, when you run into an issue, you can Slack me the CodePen. If you're slacking me files, like if you're using Atom or Sublime and you're creating files, I really don't want with, 15, 20 people have to like download files, spin up, because every time you make an edit to your file, you have to send it to me, and then I gotta download it, I gotta spin it up, make some changes maybe I save it, I send it to you. It just becomes tedious. You can do it in here and then copy it over to like your thing at any point in time. So you can, yeah, you can do it either or. Like doesn't matter to me. This just makes it easier for me or Heather to help assist on the project at any point in time. Trust me, you're gonna be sending me your stuff. Hey, listen, I can't figure out this thing with Flexbox, can you? And all of a sudden I just open it up and I'm like, all right, did you try this? Boom, and it's fixed. Okay, and that's how I want it. I want to be as quick as possible to fix any issues that you may have, okay? And so if we wanted to view this, there's really nothing in this right now, right? There's nothing in it. If I went to just change view just to, if I right click on full page view, it's really gonna come up with nothing because we haven't put anything in there, okay? But this is the project. You would be adding your HTML in here, right? If I went in here and I was like, hey, H1, hello, my final project, right? If I just did project, if I did that, and I went back here, and I refreshed it, oh, did it not save it? There we go, I just saved it now. If I go back here and refresh, I should see my final project, right? So anything that you're doing, add it in here, save it, and then you'll be all set. We'll go into today linking JavaScript files because there is a JavaScript file here. Nothing really in there but a console log, but they are linked. There's an index, there's a CSS file. Now don't get tripped up by this SCSS. SCSS is for Sass. It's kind of an advanced version of CSS, and you can do a lot with Sass. You're gonna write just normal CSS, okay? But Sass itself, has anybody seen Sass? I know some people are in the industry, you might have seen a developer working in Sass. Sass is pretty cracked out CSS. It's almost like JavaScript meets CSS and they have a baby. And this baby can do loopings, it can like create variables and functions, things that you can't do in normal CSS, right? Normal CSS is just like target this element, nth of type, maybe hover for interaction, but that's it. So later on during break, I'm gonna find a project. I just taught a Sass class today to the day class, and so I had this one project that I showed them that had some really cracked out Sass. But all you're gonna be doing is writing it in here. You write out your Sass, and then it transpiles it into CSS. That's it. So you don't have to go crazy. Just stay in that folder, this file, add your JS here, and we'll be working in this predominantly. And today we're gonna come back to this to link jQuery because you're gonna be working with it, okay? So everyone's good with this, right? If you have any questions or any issues with it, reach out to me, Slack it to me. I'm gonna call this right now, final project demo. I'll keep this one open as we work through stuff. I can always go in here and demo stuff. Awesome. You can also add directories, add files. So if you wanted an additional CSS file, you can add a CSS file. If I wanted an assets folder or an images folder, I could add a folder, put my images in there, and then reference those images, okay? There's a lot that you can do with these. Just to show you maybe a more complex one, just see where these things could be taken. Here's some projects I'm looking for, medicine scrolling, looking for one of these cracked out projects I did. Sweet Ball Mecca is really a big one. See all these JavaScript files? These are JavaScript files that I created to support the thing. These are CSS files that I split up because one CSS file was just getting way too long. So I split the CSS files, just one for a tooltip, one for styles. I have an images folder. I don't really have anything in there, a docs folder. I use the other template for this. So I have this other stuff that I really didn't need. But you can go in here and add things. Components, but I don't have any components. If you want, if you have any issues, once again, you can just reach out to me. So check. Get the setup. And we're done with that. All right. So we're going to learn JavaScript today. This is what we're learning. JavaScript. Okay? I didn't mention JavaScript is kind of like a brain. It's going to torment your brain for a little while. At the very beginning, you're going to see it's really cool. You're going to enjoy it when you start doing it. But at first, it's going to be like, this is really different. You know? It's like learning some languages. Like you could learn English, maybe German, or French and Spanish, and there's lots of similarities, right? You learn one of those. Now somebody's like, you got to learn Chinese, and you're like, that's completely different. These symbols, there's no symbols like this. I don't understand connecting these words, and like, it's a very different mindset. Okay, same concept. There's structure there. There's things that we can do. So some of the class projects that we're going to be creating in here is things like this little traffic light. This will be probably one of the first things we do. This is just for click events, like clicking on that and changing a light color. Clicking on that and making sure that the previous color is turned off and that this one's turned on. And then clicking on that to, once again, understanding that and that there's click events and functions and grabbing these HTML elements to target them specifically to give them color, right? Because this thing is going to be either green or black at any point in time. And I can add a class, that's green, remove a class, that was green, and then it's black again, right? And that's all JavaScript. So this is a kind of click event-based type project. jQuery City is another one, another kind of click event-based one where we click on cities and it changes the picture, right? So it's a matter of clicking on that picture. How do I know what picture I clicked on? There's several ways to do this. And then we have to grab this main picture and then swap out the images, right? So that image source is now equal to the image that's associated with this, right? This already has an image source. So I have to use JavaScript to grab the image source and then assign the image source. And that's all you keep doing, just reassigning it, okay? This Mars one also kind of cool. I think I might have shown this one. Just go to full page view, where we could click on, I only got the first two buttons, but we can click on these buttons, and not only does the background image change, but this changes, right? We had worked on like a similar type thing. We did this when we did Position Absolute, and we created something very similar to this at the very beginning, like the third week in or something when I jumped in. And so this kind of has that single page app idea. I can click on something and change what's on the screen. Grab those elements and replace them with new content, right? That's it. That's the whole page. It doesn't do anything. If you produce this as a final project, that would be a perfect final project. Like that would suffice, right? You have HTML, CSS, and you have some JavaScript. To me, that would be fine. You don't have to do something that's crazy. Something is simple and basic and clean. If you made it responsive, even better. Is this city pics here? There's another one. This one's for drop-downs. We'll do some drop-downs. You'll choose something, and it'll change the background color. Whatever it is, we change. So this becomes a drop-down using select an option, something we didn't cover in the HTML section, but we'll cover it here. Then we get to, we're going to spend a huge amount of time in this one because this is the one that I usually use to demo. And we're going to click on colors, changing the background. We can also capture colors. Right? I type something in here. I could type in blue, click submit, or just hit enter. Both of them work. Click on it, and it changes the background color. Okay? Go back here, go back to kind of the default. We'll spend a huge amount of time in this. And then just two others where we deal with inputs. So these are kind of input related ones. Here, if I was to type in a color, and I change the color, it changes the color. Not only does it change the color, but it updates this element too with what you grab. So these are 3 inputs. So we have to grab 3 inputs, string those inputs together as a new string of text so that we can output it here, but also change the background color. Okay, and when we actually grab these things, they are strings of text, not numbers. So when JavaScript has a handle on it, it's just a number, but a number can't be just used to do RGB. It has to, I'm sorry, text can't be used, it has to be numbers. Let me see, the last one is something that you would predominantly be doing, the to-do list. So as I do the color switcher, you'll be simultaneously replicating some of that functionality here, like, hey, new to-do, right? Add the to-do, I can click on the to-do, can I click? If I click on here, add something. If I click on that, removes the thing, that kind of functionality. And trust me, it'll take us 4 weeks to get to that point, okay? And even then, it'll be like, well, I don't remember what we just did. It'll be a lot of that, okay? So those are the in-class projects that we're going to be working with. Just to give you a heads up. You know, and you can click on them, you can investigate them. I'm not trying to hide them. You can look through the JavaScript and try to get used to it. Like the sooner you start looking at it, the sooner you're going to get familiar with what you see, and the more you're going to internalize it. If you just wait for the day to look at it, you're going to be like, I don't know, look at the solution. But we will be working with JavaScript. Okay, let me open up the slides. Intro to JavaScript. So it begins. All right, so we're going to kind of discuss why we use JavaScript. Why is JavaScript so important for front-end development? It is. Of the technologies, right? So we know that something like HTML is used for what? What do we use HTML for? Right. So, you know, HTML is going to be used for structure, you know, for our content, right? So when we want to put things on there, they have to be in certain elements. Easy enough, right? We have CSS, that's style, right? Styling, but we can also do what with this? You know, there is some interaction, right? What was the piece of interaction that we had? What did we do last class that allowed us to do some sort of interaction? And I'm just going to put here basic interaction. Using hover, right? Hover was our means of transitioning. If I add a class, so when we get to JavaScript, I can grab an element and I can give it a class. If the base styling has transition as a property and the new class has a new property, right, a new height or width, then that element is going to transition between the 2 states. Hover was our basic way to do transition, to emulate some sort of functionality, like interaction. And all we had was really hover. We're limited in how we could interface, have the user interface, right? Then we get to JavaScript. And there's like dozens of things that we can use with JavaScript. For us, we're going to kind of like manipulate the DOM. And I'll explain what this DOM is. The DOM stands for the Document Object Model, which is really the content and structure. What we look at, you know, when we go to developer tools and we're always like investigating, that's the DOM, right? It's this text-based elements like in HTML and CSS, and we load that into some sort of virtual space, right? A virtual space that I can edit, that I can change. So if I went back here and I went to developer tools, I could go in here and see the elements. I can remove the elements, right? Is it removed from the HTML? No. If it's not removed from the HTML file, then where did it go? Like, what is this? It's like a temporary space, right? It's a visual representation of what was in our files that allows us to edit what that stuff is. And this is the DOM. That's what it is, our document object model. It's an object representation of this content here that we can manipulate at any point in time. So we could go to containers and we could do whatever we wanted. I can go to nav and start playing around with these things and uncheck them, and things move, okay? We can play with this. This is fluid. This stuff, as you write it, isn't fluid, right? You write it this way, and and it has to be this way. It gets interpreted, and that's what you see. Once you see it on the screen, you can do whatever you want. It can add and remove things on the fly at will. Okay, that's what we're going to do, especially with this one, right? This one we click on, and you can already see, like here, background image changed, and you'll see it changing again. That's JavaScript. Okay, so anytime you are investigating a site and you click on things and you start to see things like get bold, the colors disappear, right? That means JavaScript is manipulating those things. Okay, and we've seen that when I've gone to food sets and we kept seeing the slides, and I kept trying to grab the one image, right? And they kept changing. I was like, oh, these things keep changing on us. So when we use JavaScript, we're going to be manipulating the DOM. We're going to be doing something. But a big thing that we're going to is allow the user to interact. So I'm going to say user interaction. Okay? Everything besides hover, and even then we can use JavaScript to listen to hover, everything that you've done on the web up to this point, where you've clicked on things, dragged things, things expanded, whatever you've done, I'm going to say 99% of that was JavaScript. That's where JavaScript is predominantly used on the front end. But JavaScript is also logic, right? If I have a game, right, when I showed you that game before, the game had logic. You click on one card and you click on another card. JavaScript's the thing that's like, hey, let me examine the first card. Let me compare it to the second card. Let me make a decision. Are they the same? If the cards are the same, show this message. If they are not the same, show this message. Allow them to restart the game. That's the logic. So you can spend a lot of time doing logic in the world of JavaScript. And as it pertains to like front-end jobs, going for front-end jobs, when it comes to this, the other thing in regards to logic that you're going to have to do to land a front-end gig job these days, you have to know algorithms. I'm just going to abbreviate it as algos. Algorithms. They will ask you an algorithm for a front-end job. I wrote some articles lately where senior people that really are solid in the front end, you know, lose their job or move on from their job. They go to apply for a job and they ask them these algorithms that they haven't been working with, right? Because they've been doing like awesome stuff. They've been building websites and the websites are beautiful and they're responsive. They have SEO in them. They have accessibility. They know SAS. They know all this stuff. And they're like, hey, can you do FizzBuzz? FizzBuzz is a really basic JavaScript algorithm. It's like basic 101, the first algorithm you learn. And some people are like, I don't really know how to solve that. And they don't get the job. And they have solid experience, but they don't get the job because companies are like, you have to know this thing. So algorithms, we're not going to cover algorithms, but algorithms are something. If you're interested, some people like who have math backgrounds. Anyone have a math background? Okay, math backgrounds, engineers, they love the algorithms. They love that. Their brains are geared to think like that. I don't think like that at all. I struggle with algorithms all the time. I teach it, but it takes me a while to really understand it. So we'll be working with it in the browser, so JavaScript in the browser. Working locally with JavaScript. And then we're going to cover data types. So some of the JavaScript basics that we're going to cover here are going to be things like creating the data types. Like, what are the things that we can work with? Similar to HTML, we had elements, right? And we had a whole slew of elements that we could work with, right? We got the CSS, different ways to target things. Nth child, nth of type, right? First child, last child, right? All of these little nuances that we could do of flexbox and grid, right? Well, in JavaScript, we have a handful of things that we can use, right? Like building blocks. Like if somebody gave you a Lego box of JavaScript, there would probably be like, I don't know, 10 things in there that you could connect and have them do things, right? Some of them have little wheels. You can build a little car if you want. Others are just there. That's all. They have more little things that you can click on, all right? So we'll learn about data types and variables, functions also, and a function is like a little mini machine. I call a function, and the function does something. That's what it is. And so you package all of your additional code inside of a little thing that the minute you call it, it does all the things that you told it to do. Okay, it's like giving someone a series of instructions. Here's the instructions. When I tell you to go, you go. But you don't go until I tell it. And then when you do go, you look at the instructions. You do everything that the instructions say. All right? And then document querying. Document querying is our ability for me to grab things on the page and remove things off of the page. Update things that are in the page, right? Like you saw those cards earlier when I was doing the memory game. Those things weren't there. The blue and the red circle weren't there, right? So I had to grab the list using JavaScript. I had to grab your input. I had to create an LI. I had to give that LI a background color, and then I had to put the LI on the screen. And then you saw the LI, and then you could interact with the LI. I had to add a click event to the LI, okay? So all of that stuff. So hold on to your hats because it's JavaScript time. All right, so I usually just kind of bang this one out. You know, Java is not JavaScript. So do not say that in this class. If you're like, hey, I'm having problems with Java, it's not Java, it's JavaScript. They are two completely different languages, okay? It was created in 10 days. 10 days, this library that Brent and I created now runs the web. Like, you have to know JavaScript. Not only is JavaScript used on the front end, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, this is the front end side of things, but JavaScript is now server side. So I can build up a whole web server that was built in JavaScript, okay? So what's really pushed, this library is being pushed now further and further into development because more developers are using it. So there's different versions of JavaScript that are out now. They went from a version called ES5, they went to ES6. This was a huge jump. This jump was the biggest jump in a long time. They added a bunch of new 6 stuff, but now they're up to like ES8. So they keep adding stuff. I don't even know all the stuff that's in here. Like, I've read articles, I've gone through it. I just haven't found the use case to actually use the new stuff. And then I'll see it, I'm like, I mean, I know it. Like, if I had to learn it and teach it, I would. But I don't know when to use it. It's so new. I'm like, I just don't really know. So it keeps evolving. They say, you know, it's not in 2015 is when now we're in 2019. We're up to ES8 with a bunch of new stuff. And it's one of the most popular languages. If you go to GitHub, so GitHub is where people push up projects, and you go to GitHub and you look at all of the active repositories or the total pushes of projects up there. What you're going to see is JavaScript is by far one of the most popular libraries being used out there. And you cannot go into front ends without learning JavaScript, okay? Even if your backend server is something like Python or Ruby on Rails or something like that for the backend, you still need JavaScript for the front end. For the user to click on things, that's all JavaScript. You can't supplement that with Python or with Ruby or Java. It has to be JavaScript, okay? So JavaScript in the browser. When do we use it? Okay, responding to user interactions, right? So user interaction. Changing the HTML content, changing styles, adding CSS or adding a class. I can add CSS directly to something, or I can add a class that has the CSS that I want to apply to the thing. And that means that that class needs to be created already in CSS. If I'm to add a class, then it's expected that the styling for that class has already been, I can't go into the CSS files and edit them. I can't go into the HTML file and edit it with JavaScript. I can only edit it using the DOM. The DOM is that virtual representation. This is what we see on the page. It is this that I manipulate, not these files. I cannot edit this file or this file. These two files are loaded into here, and that is what I manipulate. So if you're adding a class, I can add the class, but if you happen to find the class here, there's not going to be any style. It's just going to be a class with nothing. Okay? And then we can also send and receive data to and from servers. And that's kind of like the last class that we go over is, I'll add in here, a big thing is this, AP. Anybody know what that stands for? API? What's that? No, I never heard that. It's a good try, though. You commended for that one. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Never heard that. Application Programming Interface. Do you know what it's used for? Even if you don't know what it stands for, I don't care what it stands for. Who cares what it stands for? What is it used for?
It's like how you can query from a database. It's like a portal, basically. Only access like selected code that they choose to surface.
Okay. So it's a way to request data over the web. Okay? So now when your client, this is you, and you want to get data from here, I make a request, I get a response, and that response, this whole thing is API. There's an interface over here, like a little doorway here that allows me in. There's some JavaScript logic here that runs. Hey, oh man, they want this. I'll go to a database, grab it, or I'll just run some logic here, whatever it is. It's the gaming logic. Did they win? Did they lose? Not. All right, I'll send it back. There's a specific format to this. APIs are the standard way or the standard terminology for us to send and receive data over the web. Okay, and in your project, if that is something you're looking to do, I want to pull data from this thing, whatever it is, let me know. We don't get to APIs until like class 19, and then, you know, at that point in time, it's really late for you to be like, I'm going to use an API because you've already structured everything, okay? We can also pull data using this from Google Sheets as well. So if you have a sheet that has info, like I want to create my own to-do list, and I want to save to-dos, and I want to pull to-dos, you can do it with a Google Sheet also. You can create a Google Sheet, query, grab data from a sheet, okay? Really important. So we have HTML and CSS. Both are static, and then JavaScript is where things kind of really take off. Our ability to do anything and everything is in that little world. So working locally with JavaScript, how do we do that? Now, we know that these files, .html, .css, and then we're going to have a .js file, a .javascript file. Okay, and then what's the example here? Let me just zoom in a little bit. So we're going to set this up. We're going to take a look at it. So we have, this is a script tag, easy enough, right? Script tag. Once again, the way we've been working in CodePen, originally we created the whole structure, the whole HTML, opening and closing, the head, the body. We did that at the very beginning, and then we kind of dropped it just to do the body, right? Because it got tedious. You don't need all of that. I just want to get you up to speed with like flexbox and sections and name and like that stuff. So we're going to learn where we can add or should add a script tag, what's best practices for that. And usually you import it as a script tag, but sometimes you can write JavaScript directly into your HTML file. Okay, so when you do JavaScript, that's going to be imported here or run sometimes in here. Okay, it's always best to separate it. Just like with CSS, right? I could go into my HTML file and put what tag would I use if I wanted to write CSS directly in my HTML? Style tags, right? So I could have put a style tag, or I could use a style attribute on the element directly, okay? I think that's what's used here. Yeah, you see here, when I change, let me go here. When I change the image, there is a style attribute. Okay, when you use JavaScript to change the styles directly on something, it goes to the element and it adds a style tag and it adds the property. And I told you at the very beginning, don't do this. You don't write this in your HTML, you do it all in CSS. That's best practices. But now that we're using JavaScript, the fact that I said, grab this thing and change its background color, JavaScript's like, okay, well, I can't write to this, so where do I write? I can't go here and inject like style tags, that'd be crazy anyway. So I'm just going to grab the element, input a style attribute, and then add the thing that you want. Okay? So we have a couple of ways to do that, right? Script tags and that. All right. So our little codal. So I'm going to go back to the project. Go to your project. Okay? Open up your project. I'm in my project. All right? I'm going to take a look here. Now, they've already added a script tag, and they put it here just before the end of the body, right? You didn't do that. They did that. Okay? So all that's running in here in this script tag is this console log, and you're going to be using, like, console log is going to be your friend, like your best buddy as you learn JavaScript. Console log. And what it does is it outputs information. I'm running a bunch of crazy logic, and I don't know what this thing does. Like, I told it to compute this thing, and I don't really know if it's computing the right thing, so I console log it to kind of see the steps that are happening in my terminal, in my console, okay? And so where would we see this? You know, if I go to the developer tools, I will see in the console tab, JavaScript is amazing, and that's coming from this console log, okay? So just to test it, just to make sure, I'm going to go into this, and you can go into it too, right? This is like a little code along. I'm going to say, instead of JavaScript is amazing, I'm going to say something like, my final project is going to be crazy amazing. Right? I'm going to save it. And look, it outputs to the console what I typed there. Okay? Whatever logic, whatever data types I'm working with, I can output numbers and strings and text. I can run functions and output their results there. Okay? That's all I did. I just changed that and I got that. You can add as many console logs as you want. We're going to do a little bit more of this. I can say console log and say what? Of course it's the hook, my project. Boop. Right? Save it. Oh, what did I do here? Oh, because of this. See, I have that single apostrophe. I got to get rid of that. There we go. So I use single quotes here, the double quotes were used there. We'll get into that. It only really becomes an issue when you have like an apostrophe S. Okay? And so I have two things here. What's also good is you see errors, error messages like, oh man, I'm missing a what after the thing. I saw that I had the thing there. I knew it was the apostrophe. I've done this a million times, right? So that JavaScript file was already connected. We didn't have to do anything. It was already there, right? I mean, it's already pulled into our thing like this, and we have access to it, right? So if we wanted to add JavaScript, where would we add it? And when would we add it? So I'm just going to refresh this because these numbers got a little wacky. I'm going to go back to my HTML. So here. There's several places, and once again, to convey where you would put script tags, right? I can go back to some of those sites, like food sites, right? Always going to go back to these sites because at least you're familiar with them. Like, you know them, we can work around them. If I go here and I take a look at the head, because it's the head where you put that. Do you see the stuff that's in the head? That stuff that you see on the page? Like, I'm just going to get a pen and be like, do you see the stuff that you put inside the head? Do you see that on the page? I'll be like this. Nobody says anything. So no, you don't see what's inside the head. The head, have we ever really gone out of our way to like create the head and put HTML in there? Like stuff that we wanted to see? Where did we put it? In the body. Everything that you see on that page is in the body. However, the head has supporting things. You link your CSS there. You're going to link your JavaScript there. There's other things like meta tags for like SEO purposes. You can put information here and yeah. There's a couple of different places. What I'm trying to show you is where some of these sites do it and what kind of maybe best practices. So if I look here, I'm going to see a ton of JavaScript here. I can tell you to put it in the body, at the very end of the body, and then you come to this site, and there are like tons of JavaScript there, right? So here's Google Analytics. Here's this other type kit. Here's some, these are style tags. Here's Ajax Google APIs. They're importing jQuery up here. Okay, they have this other thing, whatever that's doing. They're running some JavaScript that looks like there. Here's more JavaScript. Here's a script tag where they're actually running JavaScript here in the window. All right, here's more JavaScript. These are JavaScript files. So they're using some jQuery cycle library, some feature.js in this. Okay, now I'm gonna go, just gonna collapse this. I'm gonna go to the end of the body. So here's the body. And do you see there's more JavaScript? Like they have one JavaScript file at the end of the body. So you can put JavaScript at the very top and at the very bottom, okay? There's two places that you will most likely see it. You know, I go to something like the Mars site, just once again, to convey where this stuff is. If I look at the Mars site, I don't see any JavaScript here at the end of the body. I do see like this script ID in the middle, right here, smack right in the middle, but I don't really see anything like at the very end of the body. If I go to the head, I'm gonna see script tag, what else am I gonna see? Style tag, script, right? Script source, style tags, lots of style tags. I don't know why they do so many style tags there. Did I get rid of am I outside of the head? There's meta. So here's script source. What I'm trying to show you is that they are in two separate places, okay? A lot of the times there's a sense of moving JavaScript to the end of your file here, to the end of the body, and the reason is this: load time. If you have lots of things that it takes to load, right? Everything that you see here, I go to Mars, everything that you see on this page, right? Where is that stuff right now? Where's that image right now? Where? It's on my machine right now. I downloaded that image to my machine. That's how I can see it. It was referenced, like they had a pointer to it, but I downloaded that image locally onto my machine. I downloaded fonts onto my machine. If I actually went back in here and I went to sources, and we had gone into this because I showed you that little sprite picture where I got the images. If I go in there and I take a look at assets, I see images. All of these images that make up this page are on my machine. I downloaded them. That's how I can see them, okay? Maybe they'll have a URL to the image, but I still need to download the image and put it here, and that's important. So the more things that you have to download while you're waiting for HTML to show up, the longer it takes, right? The slower the performance. So if I have large JavaScript files or large files myself that I've written, hundreds or thousands of lines long, that may take a while to download, I may not want to put them at the very top, because in HTML, we read from the top down. I have to go through each one of these, this, and then if this is a link that's someplace, I got to go to that link and grab that file. If there's like a dozen JavaScript files, I have to go to the JavaScript, grab the file, and just keep doing that, and that could make the performance of my site slower on load, right? So what if I said, hey, just load the HTML and all your supporting JavaScript that the user doesn't need immediately on page load, but they will when they click and do things. Hey, put that at the end of the body. That way they see things, awesome, and then you can load this stuff under the hood so they don't even know it's happening, right? That's the intention of doing that. Stop unless, once again, if it's something like what you're going to see up here is like Google Analytics. So Google Analytics wants to be loaded at the very top because it's monitoring maybe the load time of the page. And so they need to be up there to be like, all right, page is loading. Let's see how long it takes, because that's going to affect your SEO. You have a long load time, right? That's going to drop your page stats down. So they need to be at the top because they're at the bottom. They just, they weren't part of the whole game. They're like, I don't know how long it took. I mean, it was really fast because I just loaded and it seems like everything's there. All right. So where we add these script tags is going to be important. You're going to work in this one script file. Okay. You don't need to create additional script files. You don't. But we do need to do this. We do need to import jQuery because we will be using jQuery come Monday. jQuery is going to be our world from that point on. Everything is going to be jQuery. So I want to import jQuery here so at least we import something inside the head. Because that's where we want to import jQuery here. And there is an order of things. If my JavaScript requires jQuery as a library, then I need to load it here so I can use it here. Okay? If I'm looking for something and it's not there, then I break, right? So it has to be there. So we're going to import jQuery. Now, our code pens, like when we do our code pens, if, I just did this. You don't do this because I'll shoot you out the jQuery link. If I just went to a new code pen and I was like, we're going to be doing this a lot also, because once again, we're going to be doing everything in code pens, not our final project. But if I went to the JavaScript section and I was like, hey, I want to import jQuery. I can import any one of these and thousands of other JavaScript libraries, okay? When we talk about libraries, we're talking about this. We have this foundation of JavaScript, okay? So this is our foundation, okay? That's the base language that we use. And then we have libraries on top of that that are written in JavaScript, things like React. That's written in JavaScript. Things like jQuery, okay? That depends on JavaScript. These things are JavaScript, just written in a certain way, okay? Other libraries like, I don't know, Angular. That's another library, and there are thousands, like thousands of them that exist that you use to help you as a developer build out your site quicker, faster, more efficient, right? The same reason why I was using Emmet at the very beginning was efficiency, right? I could build a structure, boom, and it's done, right? There's no, unless you fat-fingered it, the thing would have been created instantaneously. It's the same thing. To do what these things are doing and you writing it in plain JavaScript would take you forever, and the amount of logic that you have to work out would be insane. Your brains would break. You just couldn't do it. You don't have the time to do it. So they built these libraries. So one of the libraries is jQuery, right? So if I just do JQ, I have all of these. So I'm just going to do jQuery. And we'll see here's jQuery, there's jQuery compatible, jQuery packs, Hansen table, jQuery UI, mobile, jQuery. These are just a handful of them. There's more jQuery libraries, but this is just kind of what CodePen sees as the most popular. Maybe they're like, hey, we can only show the 10 most popular. And so if I said, I want to import jQuery, I get this URL right here. This is the jQuery URL. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to slack out the URL. So we have the URL. I'll show you what we're going to do with it in just a minute. I'm going to go into our project. So we're still in the head. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Here's our head. We want to load things that you are going to see in the head are almost always going to be jQuery. You're almost always going to see jQuery loaded in the head. That's just the way it is. Because sometimes you're processing things with jQuery that's actually touching things in the DOM. So here, I want to add a script tag. Okay, so this says styles. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a comment, command, question mark. that is, and we'll go into, well, we already know. We know what an HTML comment is. That says style. I'll say scripts. Okay? So I'm just going to add a scripts comment. So when I look, you know, I mean, they're putting meta to know that that's meta. Here's style tags. Now you know where to put your stuff. So if you're like, I'm going to import some really awesome fonts, you're going to put your fonts right here, right? You're going to link to them here. You could do them in CSS, right? We did @import to import them, or you can import them here, wherever you want to import them from. So I have my scripts file. That's you. I want to add jQuery. So I'm gonna use Emmet script tab. Now it doesn't add everything I need. So doing the script tab, I kind of lost something here. So when you are doing, if you wanted to do Emmet, we'll just add it first. I'll just say src is the property. I'm going to put single quotes. I prefer kind of single quotes. And I'm going to paste that link that I slacked out. I have a typo? Source, yes. SRC, right? SRC. Yep. That's it. So I'm going to copy. I'll put that into the Slack channel. That's what we should put, and we're going to put it right there in the head. By doing that, we have access to jQuery right now. jQuery has been loaded. Okay? And we're using something called a CDN. Does anyone know what a CDN is? There you go. And what does it do? There you go. Right? So content delivery networks are also useful because they're delivering content globally around the world. If I'm in America, I want to hit a server that's going to give me the things that I want in America because it's closest to me. I don't want to go to Japan to get the same file because I have to travel much farther, go through many more routers and switches and all this internet stuff. I want to access things that are local to my proximity, and a content delivery network adds the file and then kind of propagates it out across its network. And then when you connect, it's like, hey, you're located here in New York, then you're going to get the server in Atlanta, right? If I'm out in California, you're going to get the server that's in Tucson, wherever they have the data centers, wherever they are, okay? A ping value, they're probably using the IP address, and the IP addresses themselves are broken up into networks, and those IP addresses would probably indicate where you're coming from. Or there could be a localization thing. When it does hit, then it knows where we should go to get it. That's a whole different thing. Yeah. We're going to go into like a whole different. So now we have jQuery, and you're like, all right, well, what the hell is that going to do for me? I got jQuery, right? Can I use jQuery? Yes. We can use, I can go into my scripts file right now, right? Here. Oh no, that's my CSS. I can go to my scripts. And, you know, we were doing this, right? If I was to do this now, let's just say I console log, and I'm going to do this, $, opening, closing parens, single quotes. I'm going to say bye. I'm just going to try doing that. I'm going to see, I'm going to save it. That's all I did. I'll kind of put some spaces here so you can see what we did. We'll get more into this. I'm just guaranteeing that jQuery works. And I see this output right here. Okay, this is jQuery. Don't understand it. Don't be like, what? Explain to me what the KFN is. Like, we're not going to go into that right now. Just know that that's jQuery working, because if I did this, don't do this, but I'm going to go back into my HTML and I'm going to comment this line out. I'm going to save it. I just got an error. The error is $ is not defined. $ came from here. It's the only time we see the $ was when we did this console. because we loaded jQuery, this represents jQuery. And it worked. The minute I commented out that line of code that imported jQuery, I get this error message. Okay? So I want you to kind of like internalize this error message, because what I'm going to see is when we do labs, you're going to be working on the jQuery lab, and you're going to have to need to import jQuery, and you're going to be doing stuff for, say, 15 minutes of the 20 minutes, and things aren't working, and you're like, I don't understand why it's not working. When I say, hey, go to developer tools, and you're going to go there, and you're going to see this. And you're going to realize none of your stuff would have ever worked because you never imported jQuery, and that's your first mistake, right? And I'm always going to say, if you ever call me over, what's the first thing I'm going to ask? Show me developer tools. Like, show me this thing. Call me over, and I'll be glad to help. But if you're not in developer tools investigating something, then I'm going to walk away. And I'm going to say, go into developer tools, and when you investigate it, call me back over. Because you can solve, you know, I don't know, 60 to 70% of some of the things that you're working in by just investigating this. At least when it pertained to this, because this was pretty easy. Click on things, see things, add things, change things. All right? We're all good with where to put the script tags, right? Sweet. And that's it. I'm going to undo this because you will be using jQuery in your projects, okay? We're not going to add JavaScript directly into the file because you're not going to do that. We're not going to add script tags here with JavaScript running in, because that's not something you're going to be doing in your project. It's not really done very often, just like, you know, style tags aren't done very often, so I'm not going to encourage you to do that. So I could write it here, we could do it, but it really doesn't make a difference. You'll see it, we're not going to do that. Awesome. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to start really working with JavaScript. 5-minute break. Okay.
Sorry. My mentions are like really less than JavaScript.
No, you have to click on that.
It's all within this.
Yep, click on that.
Okay.
There you go. So you can take a look right here. I'll slack this out, and then you'll have it. You can investigate it. Yeah, it won't. The thing is, at this point in time, it won't allow you to like spin this thing up. Like if you spin it up, it's gonna be like you already have too many projects. Let me know if that happens. You may not be able to work.
I don't know why my view is like this, where I have this gap here. Is that how?
Oh, it's because you're on here. You're on the responsive.
Responsive. Oh, so I should be here.
Yeah. Responsive is when we were doing responsive design.
Yeah.
That was the button you should have been in to test the media queries.
Okay. So was there something else that we needed to add, like in here? Do we need to add that where you did the?
I just did this right here. So take a look.
Yeah.
This is all I added.
Do we need to add that?
I was just adding it for testing purposes.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna slack that out, what I had there. And in the HTML, we just linked to the JavaScript jQuery file.
This one.
Yes.
So should we run it? Save and run to see how.
Yeah, save and run.
Okay.
If anything, you would see in the terminal output on the console. There you go.
Okay.
It's working.
So that's where we would see the output.
Yep,
There.
in the console.
Okay. So do we have to go back here?
No, that's if you wanted to investigate things.
Oh.
These two are two separate things. Like this one is for investigating elements in HTML.
Right.
Console is for seeing JavaScript output.
Okay.
And we're going to spend more time in that for the rest of the class.
In console.
In the console.
Okay.
At least for the rest of this class.
Okay. So we always go here, right, to investigate, like even in JavaScript or not?
No, that's just for HTML
And CSS.
and CSS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, if you did something in JavaScript that manipulated HTML, then you would go to the
Go
elements
there.
to see what it did.
Okay. Thank you.
same time. Absolutely. It's gonna be great, guys.
Yeah, like that.
Just checking out what some people have done. It's amazing what a lot of people do with just text shadow.
Yeah. So many things. Like, it's crazy what the amount of stuff that you can do.
Text shadow, though, I was kind of surprised. It was really simple.
This was the SAS stuff. Like adding variables here. This is all CSS. This is SAS. And down here is more SAS. Like you're looping through numbers and adding. See how these elements have numbers inside of them and colors? But when you go here, these divs don't have numbers. They're just divs, empty divs, right? And so here in SAS, you can loop over numbers 1 to 11. You see some similarities, like nth of type. So you're grabbing the nth of type at that number 1, 2, 3. You're grabbing that element. You're giving it a height and a width. You're giving it margins. If the number is less than 6, then I'm giving it a darken value. Darken, giving it a width, so you can see some of them are larger. I think it may be randomly. Else, it's giving it a darker, it's giving it green, right? So if you're greater than 6, you're going to be green, a shade of green. So this is all Sass. This is like JavaScript. It allows you to run these conditions. It's got just really crazy nesting elements, like this div is nested, I think, inside of this sample, right? Collapse it, all the CSS related for that thing is inside of there. It's nested CSS. Really crazy what you can do. This is also a looping construct. This is another, it's like cracked out CSS.
Is there a lot of loops that people generally use, or like that could be needed for different circumstances, or does every site like have its like whoever made it has to come up with their own loops?
Well, there's looping constructs that you can use. Okay. So if you said, here's a box, when you grab the things out of the box, there's different approaches that you can take, different tools that you can use to loop over the box. And every time you grab something, based on the loop that you use, you may be doing something very specific. Examine this thing for these properties. You might be doing that. Or grab the thing, add this thing to it and move it on. Or grab the thing, compare it to this other thing. There's lots of loops. It's really fun. I don't get to work in Sass as often, but when I see it, I'm like, oof, I really wish we could work in Sass more. So, we're just missing one person. Add a Sass. Select that out, too. What did I do with it? Did I have it here? Program languages? Nope. Thought I just had it up here. Can I close it? I think I might have closed. Oh, here's the Flexbox. Flexbox. All the Flexbox you could ever want. Event. All right. So let's jump back in. The wonderful world. JavaScript basics. Okay. Data types. So we're going to kind of start with data types. And before we jump into anything here, I'm going to get rid of this, get rid of that Flexbox. I'm not going to be working in that. That's going to be your final project. I wanted to get you set up so you have it. If you had issues with it, Slack me. You know, in 2 weeks from now, I want to be like, hey, I didn't get the final project set up, right? I'm telling you now, if you did not get it done, reach me or Heather. We will get you set up for this thing. But don't put it off and say you never got it done on today, okay? What I'm going to do is shoot out this code pen. So we're going to go back into our little code pens to do some of the JavaScript, some basic JavaScript stuff. And we'll get you into a lab. And there's nothing here. This is just learning JavaScript. There's no HTML. There's no CSS. Apparently, there's no JavaScript yet. So we need to add all of our JavaScript. So let us do that. Let's move this down. What are we doing? All right. So we saw console logging, right? And so console logs, let's see. What are they going to be used for? Actually, you know what? I'm going to flip this. I'm just going to move comments up here because I think comments are more important. Console logs are great. Comments are also something you should be writing inside of your JavaScript to understand what's happening, okay? Should have been doing it with like HTML and CSS, like, hey, this thing is doing this and Flexbox does that. Little notes, little like breadcrumbs for yourself. So when you go back to something, you're like, shoo, I know why it does, like, I know I did the thing and I made it do this, but I don't know why those things in coordination do the thing. It gets even more confusing when you get down to JavaScript. You're going to do some things, you're going to be like, I don't really know what that thing does. I got it to work. I even do that. I create code and I'll look at it a month from now and like, why did I do that? Like it's working, I click on the thing, everything works, but I'm not really sure I remember clicking on this thing and why is that thing referencing? And then I have to follow, like, I gotta go take a look at here and go, oh man, I don't really know why I did that. But I knew at the time and I got it working. It's a good feeling at the time, but trust me, when you look later and you have no idea why the thing works, it doesn't. All right, so comments. That is a single comment, okay? A single comment just has the 2 forward slashes, okay? I want a multi-comment. A multi-line comment is this. This is a multi-line comment. Meaning, I can add as many lines of comments as I so desire. See? More lines. And yet, more lines. All right. So if you're ever in the need of adding something like this, where you just want to add a bunch of stuff, you don't want to have single quotes everywhere, you can just do that. Okay. I usually, when I do this, I kind of like tab this stuff over, like move it over. I just like, I personally like almost started on the next line. That's just how I like to do it. I like doing it like this. I like these things here just clearly standing out, the text I need to run there. That's how I like doing it. But it doesn't matter. You could start writing here. It can't be written on this, the other side of this though. It has to be encapsulated in there. Those are comments. Write as many comments as you can and explain everything to yourself. Best thing that I can say with JavaScript. Console logs. Console logs are messages. So console logs are messages you leave for yourself that output content to the console, okay? So I'm gonna write another comment. We did that earlier, but I'm gonna say console log. This is my first console log. Yay. Okay, I'm gonna save it. That's all I'm writing. It's this one little console. Okay. When I do write console log, and you can see like console is blue, dot log is kind of like reddish, right? And then the rest of this is blue. So the color coding in the code pen is going to indicate some of the things that you're working with. Keywords like console. Dot log is a method. You'll see this later. Now, if I go to developer tools, I mean, you can go here to the console. I never use this console. I always go to developer tools. And in developer tools, this is the console you're going to be working with, right? We use the elements tab to investigate HTML and CSS. That's what the elements tab is used for. We use the console tab to look at JavaScript. We can even go in here and write JavaScript if we want. I mean, I could go in there and write a console log, but really it would just be silly to write a console log here. I'm going to output it in the same place. But this is JavaScript, and I could, don't do this, but I could do 2 + 2 and get 4. I can run math equations in here if I want. Okay, I can do a lot of different stuff. So a lot of the times I do come here, you'll see me go here to like create variables and test small, tiny little things out. It's not the most intuitive place to write stuff. I'd rather go to a JavaScript file to write multiple lines of code. Here I don't write multiple lines, I test one-offs. I see something, I see a value, I'm like, all right, that's what I'm looking for, okay? So here, that's what we're doing. That's a console log. Now, the content that you're going to output can be any one of these data types, can be the result of running functions and processing information. Anything can get output there, okay? Now we're going to move on to data types. All right. So when it comes to data types, I'm going to go here. Just get all the data types. I'm going to go back. All right. These are some of the data types that you're going to be working with, right? Some of this stuff is pretty intuitive that you would see on a screen. You see strings, everything that you see in HTML, for the most part, they are strings. If you see something that even looks like a number, it's a string inside of the HTML. But we also have the ability to work with numbers. I can add numbers, subtract numbers. I have strings of text here. I can join them together or concatenate them together. Like I can have you type your first name, your last name, grab that input and like output hello. First name, last name. Okay. Then we have things like Booleans. Booleans are trues or falses. Now, when we're talking logic, some of the times the logic needs to say, is that true? Right? Like, hey, am I wearing a gray shirt? True. Right? Is it red? False. Right? And then based on that logic, true or false, you do something. Right? The reason why you're asking that question is to do something in response to it. And so Booleans themselves, there is a literal true and a literal false. So I can set something to be true and then change it to false later if I need to. Okay? Then there's certain things you're not going to work with very often. Like Booleans, you do work with, you don't necessarily use the true and false themselves versus conditional logic, like asking the question, is this thing gray? That evaluates to true, and then you do something on it. But these things, you don't always use those keywords, true and false, but you use the evaluation of conditional logic. That's something we'll get into. There's null and undefined. Null and undefined, really kind of what it sounds like. Like null means there's nothing there. Undefined means I created something and I never gave it a value. We'll see this when we get to variables. So null really means this thing has nothing. I'm sending it to an absolute null thing. Undefined just means there's nothing here. Like you created a variable and they never gave it anything. You know, like var x is equal to, everyone has seen something like that. Look at any sort of code, you've probably seen something like, I don't know, we're not going to really be working with vars, but you would see something like this, like, hey, var x is equal to 10, right? We ever did, any sort of math, we've seen this, right? We have to figure this out. So that's a variable keyword. That's the name of the variable, and it's equal to, we're setting it to a value. But if we just did, var y, not setting it to a value, then that will be undefined. It doesn't have a value. You just created it, but it doesn't have a value. Okay, we'd have to go out of our way to set it to null. Then we're going to move into more complex things, complex data types. Things like objects and arrays. Objects and arrays are containers. These containers are the things that are going to contain all the other data types. They're a way of aggregating multiple properties of something and storing them together. We'll get into these later on. We'll work with both of them. We're not going to do that today. But arrays, think of an array as like a box, right? So if I had a box, right? So here's a box, right? A box. This box, I'm going to say the box is really equal to an array. Okay, an array, another name for an array in other languages is a list. So you might see like a list. Okay, it's a list of things. We put it in here, this array. And so it's just this box. And the box itself is really brackets. That's the container for the box. Okay, here's visually that box. And you put things into it. So say I was just going to put little kind of balls into the box. Little balls, big balls, weird shaped balls, whatever. these balls are going to have certain properties to them. Like, hey, that one's blue, and I can color some of the others, right? This ball could be orange, this ball could be green, right? So the fact that these balls have different properties that define them, the size of the ball, the radius of the ball, the area of the ball, the color of the ball, maybe some of the balls have like dots, maybe they have texture, right? So there's properties that define these balls, right? So a ball or ball one could be an object. And an object could define all the properties, like the size of the ball, or the color of the ball, or the texture of the ball. Okay, and then we give them values. I don't know, 10, blue, texture, rough, or smooth, whatever. And so objects are used to collect key value pairs or properties about something. So arrays are used to store things. It's a generic thing. This array could store not only balls, but it could store boxes if we wanted to put boxes in there. All right? It could store, I don't know, ping pong paddles. It doesn't really matter. It could store anything that you want in there. It's a generic container, right? The container itself should probably contain the same things. When I compare arrays, I think like you're moving. When you move, the first couple of boxes are all the stuff that's kind of related. I'm in the kitchen, I'm putting all the stuff kitchen stuff. I go to the bedroom, it's all bedroom stuff, right? At some point in time, you start seeing like things all over the place. Like that was in the bedroom, that was in the kitchen, but those boxes are already packed and gone. So I take another box of miscellaneous stuff and I throw this stuff in there, right? There's still a relationship with the concept. House-related stuff, but it's not as specific as the kitchen stuff, or the bedroom stuff, or the living room stuff, but they do have a relationship. So arrays are used as containers to hold things that have a relationship, for the most part. That's what they're used for. And then objects like this, ball one, ball two, they are, I'll just put here, objects are things where we describe the thing itself. We give it key value pairs. So we are all objects, right? This marker is an object. This table, that chair, all of these things have multiple ways to describe them. Those become objects, okay? So it's a way of aggregating properties related to one thing versus an array, which is a collection of related things themselves. That's the difference, okay? And then we'll get into functions later, but a function is just a way of like automating some code. I got a bunch of code that I want to run, but it only runs when I call the function. We'll get into that. We'll see that. So these are our data types, okay? Now, we can perform arithmetic operations. We'll do that later on, like little snippets of it. We don't spend a lot of time like adding numbers in here. This isn't a math class. This is like a work with the DOM, get some stuff on there, collect user input. That's what we focus this class on. We have advanced math libraries that can do power ofs and square roots if you need them. I don't often use them, but when I work with D3, which is a data visualization library, sometimes I do use the square root of something. Almost never the power of, but math has some other things that we can use. So I'm just going to go here. So we have our data types. So once again, I can console log. So let's do this. Console log. We can say, hey, this is a number, comma, and I'm just going to give it a number, 10. You can give it any number you want. Okay? When I write my console logs, I almost always do it in this fashion. I console log what it is that I want to see. So I'm just not looking at a console log full of like outputs, but output that has context. The context has been given based on this text here. So if I take a look, look, it outputs a number, right? So you see this is black? That's a string of text. That's a number. So JavaScript interprets those things as different. Okay, so here, so we have, this is a number. Now we know what a string is, so I don't want to output a string, but we know that that's a string of text, right? So I'm going to go to maybe console log. This is a Boolean, okay, comma. Now I'm going to say true. I'm also going to do comma and say false because those are the two Booleans we have, right? Things are either true or false. There's no neutral. There's no, I'm not either or. Like you either exist or you don't exist. There's no like in between. And if I output that, we will see the number 10 and true and false. Okay. Once again, we can use these later to evaluate things, right? Just for the sake of kind of showing you, you don't have to do this. I'm not going to do it in the file, but I'm going to go here. And if I say if true, we'll learn this later on, yes. And look, it outputs yes. So I'm running some sort of conditional logic. The way you think, hey, if the thing is, hey, if the store is open, I'm going to go in. If it's not, I'm going to go home. I'm going to look for another store. But if I say if false, no, nothing happens because it's not true. Only if this is true does this happen. I'm just kind of showing you the context of Booleans, trues and falses when they're used. And this is kind of the scope. We never do if true though. We never type true. It's always a condition. Is the store open? Is the color red? Never like if true. If you say if true, then the thing's always true. There's no condition there. It's just always going to run. So we have our Booleans, right? Okay. Boolean. What was our other little data type? Booleans null. So once again, I'm not gonna really focus on null and define. I'll do objects and arrays just so that you can see what these things are. We're not gonna really delve much into those two, but I want you to see console log. This is an array, and an array has brackets, and we put things into those brackets, right? I don't know. I could put numbers, 1, 2, 3. I could add strings, vol1, vol2. Doesn't matter, right? Here, if I console log, I'm going to see 1, 2, 3, vol1 and vol2, right? I could have done squares, numbers, I can put whatever I want into this box. An array is a box. You can put whatever you want into the array. I could even put other arrays.
In JavaScript, is like the ending of whatever it is that you're typing out, is that just based on whatever opening bracket it is that you're using? Like, do you no longer have to use like a semicolon or anything to indicate that you're done?
So in JavaScript, right, if I was to run this tool, like I'm not adding, so you're bringing up a good point. In the world of JavaScript, you're going to see a lot of semicolons that terminate the end of an expression. Like this is an expression. And I terminate it. And for a long time, that was a must. And for still to this day, people are going to be like, yeah, you need semicolons. You really got to have semicolons. You don't always need semicolons because there's tools now that if I went in here and I dropped this down and I said, tidy my JS. I'm just going to tidy it up. Tidy JS. Watch what happens. Boop. It added semicolons everywhere. I didn't have to add them. It added it. So it's adding it because it expects it there. But there's tools out there now that we use that add it for us. And then when you get to React, no one in React is writing with semicolons. But there's something under the hood that's like when you hit the button that says convert this code into like normal JavaScript, it goes and adds semicolons where it needs to add those things, okay? So we don't need semicolons. Don't go out of your way to like write semicolons. I'm never gonna write a semicolon. You're never gonna see me write any of them at any point in time. Once again, you can just be like, do we need semicolons in JavaScript? And you'll see, do we need semicolons? The rule when happens, right, semicolons, do we need? And so I would go to Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is the site that you're going to go to when you're looking for issues with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you already might have gone. You might have done things like Flexbox. Why is my Flexbox not working? Takes you to Stack Overflow. Everyone goes here. I missed semicolons in some places, but it's not throwing in any errors. Do I need it? And the answer is the concept is known as JavaScript insertion, so it automatically inserts it. Right? We don't need it anymore. I think that's what he said. It does something called semicolon insertion. All right, well then what the hell? I don't need it. Right? This isn't the best answer, but I have read other articles that are like semicolons is like a thing of the past. So, but when I was taking the WDI program here, like in 2014, I had an issue and I posted it on Stack Overflow, and I left out a bunch of semicolons because I wasn't writing them either. And some person, some developer, like, spoke nasty to me. It was just nasty. They were like, yeah, if you want to be taken seriously, you got to add semicolons. And all I kept thinking was, you're either going to help me solve the problem or you're not. Like, take your rant and, like, go rant to someone else. Like, you took the time to write that, and you didn't even give me an answer? Like, oh, my God, aren't you amazing, right? So we have our array. Let's do an object. I want just to extend this array, just so that you can see the array can contain another array if I want to. Okay? So here, I just added another array. We can add objects later too. The array is a generic container. You can put anything you want in this generic container. There's no limits to how many things it can contain or the types of things that it can contain. It can contain anything. You're typing it, it can be in there, okay? Then we're gonna go to console log. Hey, this is an object, okay? And an object has curly braces, and I'm gonna give it a key. The key is name, and I'm gonna just say Joe. If I wanted it to have a second key, right? I don't know, maybe height. I don't know, 5.9 or 9.5, right? That would make me really tiny. I'd be a tiny person. And then it outputs. This is an object. Key value. These are key values, but you can also consider them like properties. If they're describing me, you wouldn't be like, hey, what's your key? What's your property? Like, what's your value? You'd be like, hey, what's your name? What are the properties that describe that person? You wouldn't be like, what are the keys that describe that? That didn't make any sense. We would say properties. Properties describe things. Name the value of the property, comma, because I have another property name with a value. You can see that this is 9.5 is blue. This is red because it's a string of text inside of it. Okay? So we cover the bases with those things. We'll use them more in depth. I'm just trying to introduce you to them so you see them. The next thing that we're going to work with is string concatenation. String concatenation is joining strings together. So I want to do something like console log, and I'm going to say hello, let me see, plus world. Let me see, does that work? There we go. So we could have done it as one single string of text, but what I'm doing is concatenating two strings of text. Now, do you see how hello world here is connected? That's not how I want my user to read it, because they're going to be like, he can't spell. He's a developer that can code, but they can't spell. So I'd probably want to add a single quote here, and then another plus sign, and then I should have a beautiful hello world. Right? String concatenation. Okay? This is how you're going to see it. Anytime you usually have spaces between words, they're usually done like that. I mean, I could have put a space between that single quote and the W, and we would have created the space, or put a space between the O and that, and we would have the same space. But once again, when I capture information from you, I'm just grabbing whatever you put in there, and I'm not going to grab it and try to stick a space here. Right? I'm going to just insert a space where I know a space should be, right? Code needs to be kind of, when you're talking writing things programmatically, I have to take in standard input and output something that makes sense. Based on what you gave me, I have to be consistent with the output. If you give me two things, I have to output those two things in the same fashion, right? If you forget to give me one of those things, then I may break because I expected two things, okay? So that's string concatenation. There is another way to do string concatenation, and I'm gonna add it here. Actually, we're not gonna do that just yet. It requires that we create a variable in order to do that. Actually, you know what? We're gonna create a variable just to show the other way of doing this. And it's called string template literals, okay? And this is how we do it. I'm gonna create a variable. I didn't wanna warp the world of variables just yet, but I am. Now I'm gonna say we're gonna use this keyword let world equal to world, okay? I'm creating a variable. We'll get into this more later. That's all I'm doing, creating a variable, okay? Oh, I zoom in too much. Okay, so like that. Now I'm gonna do this. I'm going to console log again, but when we do string template literals, so string template literals use backticks, something that you don't normally use. You don't use backticks at all. Use quotes, double quotes, single quotes. You almost never use backticks. Backticks are above the tab key on a Mac. And so when we want to do this, I'm going to create backticks, two backticks, right? So here's my opening and closing backtick. And I'm going to say this, hello, normal string of text, a literal, and this is where the literal comes in. Literal, I'm going to literally type a space. That's a literal space that I just typed, okay? And then I'm going to enumerate the variable. So I stored this value inside of this variable. I could have called this thing whatever I want. I'm just giving it semantic names so it makes sense. I could have called this A or B or C. Called it Joe, doesn't matter. I stored this value inside of that, okay? And now I want to call the value that's stored inside of that. You do that with a $, an opening and closing curly brace, and then the variable name that you're looking to interpret. So I'm going to do this also. I'm going to add a comment here and say, hey, this is string template literals. And I should see in my terminal right here. Oh, let me go back. I have to zoom out just a little bit here so you can see what I did there. Once again, I'm going to paste that into the Slack channel. So I didn't need all this space over here. I just kind of put that space there to create space, but we didn't need the space there. Okay? So this is the new way of doing it. So when I mentioned like the difference between, or the new versions, right? I was like, hey, this was the really old way of doing things. And then they came out with a bunch of new stuff, like literally a lot of things they came out with in this. That was one of them. And this is how I write or concatenate strings of text. And I don't concatenate them anymore, because concatenation means using plus signs. I use template literals to join strings of text together. That's the new way. That's the way you should be doing it. If you default to this, that's fine. It kind of makes more sense, right? I mean, at least visually it looks more intuitive than like, I don't know where the $ came from, and like two curly braces. I've never seen that, right? JavaScript is just going to open up this new world to you that's like what? How? This is crazy. Why did they do that? It's just different. Okay. Properties of things. Okay. So, I have a string of text, right? I have world. Let's do this. I have the variable world. That is this. Okay? So I'm going to do this. We're going to console log this again. I'm going to do this. Everything's a console log. Console log world dot length. And I get the number 5. Right? The word world has a certain number of characters, right? How many characters does that? 5. 5 characters, right? This property, length, describes the length of the word. It is a property of the word, of the string of text. So a string of text has a length property. An array has a length property too, because an array, if I said if I do console log, so I'm going to do this, I'm going to put before this. Remember, I'm always going to put something here. This is a property, okay, just so that I always have something there. And then I'm going to say this is a property as well. And I can say, I can create an array, do 1, 2, 3, dots length. And I should get the number 3. An array has a length because we have things in the box. Hey, how many things are in the box? Length, got the things in the box, right? This length for an array and a string is going to come in handy later when I tell you, I need you to go to the box and grab everything from the box. And so your first question would be like, well, how many things are in the box? Because that's how many times I need to run the code. And then I say, ask its length. Oh, there's 10 things in the box, then I need to run this thing of code 10 times. Grab it, do the thing, move it over. Grab it, do the thing, move it up, move on to the next line of code. So length is a really key property. That's why we bring it up here. Then we get to methods. Okay, so we know a property just describes something. Okay, a method, I'm going to put here, methods act upon the thing, whatever the thing is. So properties describe the thing, whatever the thing is. A method acts upon it. We put acts upon it. What does that mean? All right, so here we go. I'm going to console log again. Okay, this is the uppercase method. And then I'm going to say world dot to uppercase, I think, is that it? Yeah. So what I want to point out here too is that length was just a straight word. A method ends in parens. See that? That's the difference. I'll know visually.
Is that a function?
It is a method. So a method is a function. They are the same thing, it's just content. So this really is a function, but it's a method. A function, and a method is a function that's attached to something. It's not a freestanding thing. Okay, this is attached to this thing. So this function only exists on this thing. It's not something that I can call anytime I feel like calling it. Okay? But those parens indicate that it's a function. And look what it did. It turned it to uppercase. So it took the thing and it did something to it. It acted upon the thing. So if we have 2 uppercase, what do you think we would have as the opposite of that? So lowercase, right? Awesome. You're seeing things. This is also an example of, and we'll see this when we're writing variables and functions. This is called camel case. When you're writing something in JavaScript, the first character is always lowercase. But the minute you hit another word, the first letter is uppercase. The next word you hit that letter is also uppercase. So when we do something like that, we say to upper case, right? And so that's our first word, that's our second word, that's our third word. This is always lowercase, but the first character and the first character here are always uppercase. And so this is kind of like a camel case, like a little camel. Okay? You don't have to write it like this, but that's how people write it in JavaScript. It is expected that you write it like that. Those are just some of the guidelines that you do. Just like you don't call things var x and y unless you're doing math. You don't go into this code and be like, x is equal to world, because that's not going to make any sense to anybody who's like, what the hell does that mean? When you reference x on line 310, why is world? Like, why is that? That doesn't make any sense. Okay? So act upon a thing and have closing and have open, close, parens. Okay? That's how you can tell the difference between a method and a property. This tells me it's a method. And clearly I mutated the thing. I changed it. I didn't actually change the actual variable. It's still lowercase. I just kind of like showed it. I was like, take it, show it as uppercase, but I didn't really touch it. Okay. Built-in objects. What's an object? It's a thing, right? We saw it. We just did it too, right? Where's our object? Our object's further up. An object is like this, right? Key value pairs. It describes things, right? Well, we have access to global objects inside of JavaScript. And one of those global objects is math. And you saw that before, math.powerof or math.square root. So I'm going to say console.log, hey, this is the math object in action. So I'm going to do this, math.random, blink, and let's see what that gives us. All right. This is a math function. Math is the global object. Random is what? What? It's a method, right? Because it ends in parens. And look, it gives me a value. That's a random number. If I run this thing again, if I like, I don't know, put a space here so it runs one more time, I get a different number. The number changed. You're going to use, this is a method. This you use all the time. Hey, I'm playing a game. Guess a number between 1 and 10. Or like randomly shuffle things. I randomly grab things from the array. I'm like, all right, give me a random number, 1 to 10. Oh, 10? All right, grab the thing. Oh, give me another random number. 3? All right, grab the 3. Like you use this a lot in JavaScript. A lot. It's one of those key things that you use, okay? So, is JavaScript as exciting as you thought it was going to be? Probably not, right? This particular stuff isn't all that exciting. Like you have to learn the fundamentals. It's no different than like, hey, this is a head tag. Oh, hey, this is a section. Oh my God, that's amazing. It's an H1. Stuff wasn't as exciting until you put it all together and you created something, right? Then it became exciting. So it's 8:29. So let's take another 5-minute break. When we come back, I'll assign the lab. It won't be live chat.
syntax here is not too dissimilar from Java.
I'm not really familiar with Java.
I took Java many years ago. It's really funny.
I think they are similar. I mean, I think variables and creating them are probably really similar.
Yeah.
Data types. But I don't really work with Java, so I can't really say.
Java. 2012, 2015.
So you're,
I wouldn't say that.
you're proud.
There's a reason why I did not go to computer science.
Computer science is hard.
How long does it take before like just looking at this stuff makes a lot more sense? Like on Tuesday when you showed us that dash WebKit dash MOZ that you'll see on film
Yeah.
tools, like that opened my eyes to a lot of things. Just when I first saw that, I just went right past it because I had no idea what it meant.
Yeah.
So like kind of something similar with this, like how long?
And that's kind of like depending on the person, depending on their aptitude to like pick this particular stuff up. I don't know.
Is it similar to like CSS where you can copy something like that from a website and then break down the function and see how they did things?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. Like if you copied 10 lines of CSS and you knew 6 of them, but there were like 4 you never saw, like linear gradient or something. You're like, what's that? Box shadowing, or doing a transition with a Bezier curve, a custom like transition. At first you'd be like, what the hell is that? You start looking at it, changing values, Googling it, and then you're like, oh, I know this thing. You may not remember how to write it the next time. Like if you asked me to write a linear gradient, I'd have to look it up. Off the top of my head, I don't know how to write linear gradients. I don't use them every day. But you would pick it up. And so it's just the more working with it. The more that you work with this stuff, you know, it's kind of like the projects. Kind of like a Relaxer, Fashion Blog. If you were to like go back and rewrite those every day from scratch, after a few weeks, that stuff would be like second nature. But if you only do Fashion Blog one time, that's lost within a week. 2 weeks, you would struggle like to reproduce the thing. So just keep working with it. You know, use a Flexbox, then use Grid. Use them both. You know, constant. I would say it's ask the daytime students. Ask them. Or, I mean, they took the class. So 2 of them took the class. Christina and Shayla took this same class. They would know. They'd be, oh, it's going to take you yada yada. It's when you start working with it. We're just doing the basics, and the basics. You have to do JavaScript. So your final project must contain something JavaScript related. Clicking on a button, grabbing somebody's email. Ta-da, that's JavaScript, right? Oh, HTML, CSS. I'd love to see it mobile. I mean, this is an intro class, so it's kind of like, what do you want to build? Take a look at the other projects, right? So having an idea, previous final projects, you can go and take a look at any one of these. You know, some of them are better than others, but this guy wanted to do something on Gordon Ramsay. And so we had Gordon Ramsay, and you can click on things like read more. It takes me down somewhere. I guess you click on the videos or something. Oh, there you go. I don't know, maybe that's JavaScript scrolling. So the fact that I scroll kicked that off. So let me see if I go back. No, oh, there you go. So I don't know, maybe that is like a hover thing. Oh, that's a hover. Yeah, we kind of did that. So I think he took, you know, what's funny is I think he took that from the thing and he was like, look, I did what we did in class, right? That's kind of a hover thing. I don't know where he put his JavaScript. Maybe here, maybe adding this and clicking on this, but I'd have to take a look at the project and be like, hey, where's your JavaScript? Did he put any JavaScript? Yeah, I know. I don't know what this is. modal overlays, modal ID pop-ups. He's got some script files here. These aren't his stuff. I don't know what these are. So this tells me there was a lot of copying from something else. So I'll know when I look at your code and you need some help with something. Plus, I know that that wasn't his code, that's this person's code, only because I knew what they had a week before. And then the week is like it changed. And I'm like, hey, that's kind of changed. This person had some JavaScript too. I'll preview the site. It's up here, full page view. They had. Yeah, so you click on something, something happens. Like there was a click event. It was an amazing person struggled with JavaScript, so they didn't add a lot of it. But say, let me see, a good one that I did like, that I thought was really, where is it? Where is it? It's from a previous, Jacqueline's, hers was really nice. Jacqueline's, she did a pretty good job. This is good. I'm going to change the view to go to full page view. And so scroll down. I think you click on that. That's a click event. I clicked on something. I opened up that page. I click on that. It goes away. That is JavaScript. They didn't add a lot of JavaScript. Maybe capture their email. Email at gmail.com, right? Boom. Did they capture it? No. I think they just had that as a, maybe there's a more, go back up. So I think the only JavaScript on here is that. So it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be like this crazy amount of JavaScript. It just has to be something. For plants, that's JavaScript. Scrolling, that's a third-party library that I showed everyone anyway. So lots of stuff that you can do. I really forgot the other one. There was a really good one. Jen. Oh, Jen's is pretty decent here. This is a travel guide. I think I'd shown this. Travel guide. I'm going to go down a way like they put Google Maps in here. They put this where you can click on stuff. See? Changes the text. That's JavaScript. Click on something. It grabs these things and adds those things. I think that's it. Click on details. That doesn't go anywhere. This also came from like the Mars site. I showed them that. They did the same thing. You click on this. They took the code and they factored it for this. Same thing. Background image, little dots, things changed. They had issues with like the pictures growing in size and like changing the shape of things. We had to figure that out. But so lots of little things there. You can take a look and see what projects are available. All right. First lab. You're going to go to Code Academy. Code Academy. I'm going to Slack this out. Oh, no. I don't know what's happening here. Code Academy. All right, you're going to have to sign up for a free account. Just letting you know. Slack it out. Sign up for a free account, and then you're going to come to this section right here. Okay, so I'm going to give you a moment to sign up for an account and get to that free section. Sign free account. Okay. Put a thumbs up. Click on the thumbs up when you've created the free account. Take a moment. And then if you click on the link that I slacked out, it should take you here. Okay? Code Academy is a great site. Once again, if you want to pursue JavaScript after the class, you didn't want to take the JavaScript class that they offer, you could work through some of this material. And what you're going to see is the things that I was just teaching you, you're going to see in here also. And so if I'm teaching it, that means you have to know it. If Code Academy is telling you you should know it, then you should know it. It may not seem useful now, like, oh, but I just want to like grab some input and do the thing. Yeah, we're going to get to that. But there are some fundamental things that you have to learn before you move on. That's just JavaScript. JavaScript is all these fundamental little things before you can put them together. If you don't understand how to run conditional logic, then you can't include conditional logic in your application. I can't give you a scenario that uses conditional logic because you don't understand conditional logic. Okay? So you only have one click so far. One click. Una click. 6 clicks. See? See how that number goes up? Seven clicks. There we go again. You have a lot of material here. Some of it's free and then some of it you pay for. I want to use it as to expose you to the tool. You're also doing free code camp, but free code camp's free and it's really easy. This gives you, because they do have the upgrade to pro, they're going to give you some free stuff, which is really good. And then they're like, hey, you want to do this other stuff, upgrade to pro. Okay? So, okay, I got 11 clicks. I'm going to move on. Is anyone still trying to sign up for an account? And that means 12 clicks is a go. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go to the introduction section. In the syllabus, it's Learn JavaScript Introduction. That's where we're going to go. Okay? Then you're going to click on the Introduction to JavaScript section. Okay? Go to it. Why is mine not opening? I have done it. I've gone through it. I ran this. You've done the lesson before?
Yeah, I'm remembering now.
Oh, okay. So some people might have done it. I gave this last class in the class before, and they liked it. It felt like it was a really intuitive way of working through the JavaScript. Because once again, you're just playing with like data types and strings and things, and it's like, I could put a bunch of things together that do the same thing, but they explain it much better. So you're going to start with this. They just give you a review of, oh, so I have to go back. So let me go back to what is JavaScript. So that's what you should see if you click on it, right? What is JavaScript? Okay. Then you're going to click on next. It'll just, you don't have to read that. Click on next. Then it's going to have you go through some of the things we did. Console log something. They're going to ask you to console log. So you'll read this and go through some of the console logs. The instructions are down here. So if you know console log, and we've used it several times, hey, use console log code in the editor to log your age to the console. Right? You don't have to pick right there for 21. Run your code. Then I just click on the run button. All right. 2, on the next log, log a number representing the number of weeks you've been programming. Once again, this is just about practicing writing a console log. You've written it a bunch of times. That should be really easy. Okay? That shouldn't take too much time to do. 2 console logs. And then if you go on next, it's just more stuff. Like, hey, run this, run another console log. They're going to have you concatenate strings of text maybe, or write a string of text. So it'll be down here. It'll say, let's practice adding some code comments. And then you'll add comments and things. So just work through this. It's really basic, has the instructions. I could have copied and pasted and done it, but I think this is a pretty cool tool. And I want to encourage you to use the free tools to keep practicing JavaScript. So you're going to go through sections 1 to 10. Okay? 1 to 10, and they cover everything between data types, adding numbers, arithmetic, string concatenation, we did that, properties, methods, built-in objects like math. Get some extra practice. Okay? Work on that. I'm going to set a timer for about, I'm going to say 20 minutes. Okay? So you're off. You're off to the races. If you have questions, call me over. Or Slack Heather. And then click on. Okay. And I just put a poll when you're done with sections 1 to 5. Just click on it so I can keep track. See how many people completed 1 to 5. Get some more water. And I'll do that. So just, I would say go straight to the instruction, you click on next, but the next thing you select add another console. So click the question, so now write another console. The next one. Just put any other, we're just asking, like, hey, how can you see the code? That's it, hit run. It works. Looks good. Okay. And then you get two green, so that means it's good. And you go next. And so the next one is add the comments. So looks like you have to go to the console. I don't know if that's what it's looking for.
So you would go all the way into this, get to like, so you could read through this filter.
That flies by. That was 20 minutes. 20 minutes. So let's do this. The tool is pretty intuitive. I mean, if you didn't get it finished now, you can do it later. It's really, adding numbers. Didn't let me go. It's been a while. Doing data types and typing in data types. All right, let's see. Multiplying. So you didn't finish your work on it. We didn't do some of this stuff. I didn't do the adding, subtracting. Just, once again, there's so many things to do. I really don't work with the arithmetic operators very often. Maybe, no, the addition operator and subtraction a lot. Because if you're clicking on things and you're incrementing and decrementing numbers, but almost never the division. And like some of these things I just don't work on. But you can work on that. You don't have to finish it now. I wanted to get you started and working with the tool. Codecademy is a really good site to kind of get your JavaScript up to speed. If anything, JavaScript does require more working with JavaScript every day. Otherwise, it's gone like that. This stuff, more intuitive. It's more visual. Yeah.
Also,
Oh, Codecademy for the app? Oh, awesome. Yeah. You should also, we'll go over the homework, but there's the free code camp. I asked that you started to get started with this. I'll show you what I want you to hit later on when we hit the homework. All right, so I'm going to do a code along for variables. Now, I'm going to go back into our code pen. All right? Code along for variables. And when it came to variables, I had shown what a variable is, right? Kind of almost needed to jump the gun in order to do string template literals. Because that wasn't there, right? Whoever completed it saw string template literals. It was there. I know these three people had gone through it. Aaron, did you complete it? Did you see string template literals as
Yeah.
one of those things, right? String concatenation, string template literals. They were there, I think, like section like 7, 8 or something like that. So I wanted you to at least see it here and then go practice. Once again, seeing it and then doing it, again, it's a whole nother ballgame. So we did go over a variable. That was a variable. Let's world is equal to something. Now, when it comes to JavaScript, there are several different variable keywords that we can use. So the variable keywords that we can use are things like let, const, and var. Those are the keywords. The keywords define the type of variable or the scope of variable. Now, we're almost going to always work with let. That's what we work with. So if I work with let, I can say, I don't know, let fruit, equal apple. That's what it is. And I'm saying let fruit equal apple, which means now that I have fruit, I can console log and say, hey, console log, hey, this is fruit, right? And then console log the fruit. If I go up here, I should see, hey, this is fruit. And then I just call the variable. That's called calling the variable. I define a variable. I created the variable here, right? I use the variable keyword let. There's 3 options for creating variables: let's, const, and vars. Vars are a thing of the past. So vars are, in this little world here, they only had var. This was the only thing they had to work with was vars in the old version of JavaScript. In the new version, they split a var off into let and const. Now, these are new. This still exists. There's like one use case that I know for using vars. Now, otherwise, we use lets and const. A let variable allows you to redefine it. So I said, hey, fruit is equal to apple, but then, I don't know, they're playing the game, they're doing something. The user chooses another fruit. I need to redefine that variable. So redefine, right? The fruit variable. And we can do that by just doing this. Fruit is equal to, I don't know, orange. And if I console log this again, console log, put it under here, zoom in a little bit. I gotta get rid of here. I will see this will change. The first time we ran this, fruit was equal to apple when I first defined it. Now I'm redefining the fruit variable, reassigning it. Or maybe I should have said reassigning it a new value. And so now fruit, because we created it, I can reference it later and reassign it something else. And if I console log fruit, here, we should see, here's apple, here's orange. Okay? That's a let. We can do it with var. I don't want you using vars, so don't use them. Always use lets. If you have a question and you're like, should I use lets or vars? My answer is going to be use lets. Don't use vars. But as you examine code, you're going to see vars out there. And you're going to be like, oh, but they're using vars. You're going to copy and paste the code, and you're going to be like, hey, it works. Yeah, it works. Change it to lets. Now, if we wanted to use using const, changes things a bit. It can't be reassigned or redefined. I'm going to actually change this to reassign, not redefine, reassign. So if I was to say, I don't know, let vegetable, right? Or let meat. There we go, fruit. Let's do meat. Meat is equal to, I don't know, cow. All right? Oh, I'm not doing let, I'm doing const. Const. I can console log, hey, this is meat and, cow or beef, right? Say cow. And I'll console log, boop, this is cow. Got all these console logs now. I always have to go to the end. Here we go. Cow is not defined. Oh, because I said meat. See how I got an error? Cow is not defined. I never created a variable called cow. I created a variable called meat, and I stored the string cow inside of it. So now I'm going to say meat. And now if I do that, it should work. Go to the end here, and I should see this is meat, and we have cow. Now if I try to reassign meat to be, I don't know, const, and here we go. Meat is equal to, I don't know, pig. I'm going to get an error. It says here, assignment to constant variable. A const, just like it sounds, is constant throughout your code. You cannot reassign a const. The idea in coding is this. I created this variable as kind of like the thing. You can't touch the thing. You can't edit the thing. The thing, it needs to be this thing throughout the lifetime of my application. Just think like you're doing math and you, like pi. I forgot whatever the value is of pi, but right? Pi is pi. It's always pi. If you did, let pi is equal to this, and all of a sudden somebody's like, I'm going to change the value of pi. Well, that's going to ruin all of your math. Anything that's looking for this constant, or the golden ratio. I think it was like 0.618. I only knew that because I watched a video recently that had the golden ratio. It's like the perfect number of shapes that we see. If you change that, and it's expecting it to be that, then all your equations are going to be broken. So consts are not used very often, but they are when you want to visually indicate or protect your code and visually indicate to the other person. There's 13 people in the room. What if we're all developers working on the same project, right? We need mechanisms to protect our code so that things don't get edited, right? And seeing that this is a const gives clear indication that you can't change it later, right? This error message will indicate later on that you couldn't change it. Oh, they made it a const, so we can't change it, right? And there'll probably be good reasons for that. Much of the time we use lets. We use things that are fluid. We can change the values. We can do whatever we want. But sometimes we do not. Sometimes we use consts to force the thing to be the thing, Okay, so it can't be reassigned. You will get this error message. So I'm going to just kind of take that error message right here and paste it. It can't be reassigned. That's the error that you're going to get if you try to reassign. Okay. You just did some of the math assignment operators, so I'm not going to really cover that, but the multiplication and the division. When we're incrementing, so I'm going to say you're going to see this all the time. Let counter, right? Let counter equal to 0. Awesome. Hey, how many times did you use a click on the thing? I don't know. We start at 0 and then we start counting, right? We can increment this by doing, and I'm going to say console.log this, I'm going to say increment counter. And we're going to do counter plus plus or counter plus equals 1. 2 ways to increment the counter. Now, if I go down here to see the results, I have to like really get rid of all these. Can you do it? Let me see. Save it. Oh, you know why? Because it's still trying to do this. It's erroring out right there. My code won't run to the next line because that's like a terminal error there. It's like, hey, thing's broken. You can't do it. Okay? So here I said, hey, increment the counter. I did counter plus plus, but we still see that that's 0. But the next time it's 1. Right? Oh, I'm sorry. The next time it's 2. So you can see that this doesn't happen immediately, right? It happens after the fact. It's like read counter first and then increment counter later. Here it's like, hey, counter was 1 and you want me to plus equals 1, so I'm going to do that and output the results, okay? Both of them increment, but they increment them at kind of different times. So depending on your code, if you do have this or this, and you're like, oh, I wanted to see the number 1, right? Because if I got rid of this counter, if I just kind of get rid of it, watch, the number, should it be 1? Oof. It's 1. You see the difference. 1 did increment it, but we didn't see the immediate impact of it. And the other one incremented it, and we did see the immediate impact of it, okay? You will see both of these all over the place, okay? I use this all the time. When I don't want to see the immediacy of it, I want to just plus plus, and then that's the end of my code. And then I wait for the user to do something else, and the number's already there. So it's already been incremented. We did do string interpolation already, and then there was type of. Type of is another way to see what something is in JavaScript. Type of is more like, I'm just going to go down here, quickly do this, get rid of all this. Type of is something like this. Type of, let's just say string. And it tells me that it's a string. I can say type of array. Let me see. It tells me that it's an object, not an array. Right? It's like an array is an array. Why is it an object? We can do type of object. Let me see. Just an empty object is an object. Type of 21, a number is a number. So this is also a global thing that we can use at any point in time. And so sometimes when the input comes in, I have to guarantee that you give me a number. If I'm writing code that expects to add things and the user's just like, oh, they want to add things, so here I'm just going to put my name, that's going to break my code, right? I need mechanisms to say, hey, did you give me a number? If you gave me a number, awesome, we can move on. If the type of value that you gave me is equal to number, awesome, let's move on. But if it's not, if it was a string or an object, error out and say, hey, you didn't input a number. So you have to input a number. So type of is a valid thing to work with, okay? It is something that more so in like, when we get to functions, okay? We didn't get to functions, but we will get to functions, okay? So I'm gonna save that. We don't have time. The other lab was the other section in Code Academy. We don't have time to do that because it's 9:20 right now. I thought we'd have time. When I push JavaScript on the first day, I'm always like, we're gonna bang out so much stuff, and I only realize takes a lot of time to go over these very basic principles, but you have to do it. Like, trust me, you need to be exposed to them, you need to see them, you're gonna constantly see them. So there was another lab to do in Code Academy that would have walked you through another section, which was the variables, which once again, you can do, only it'll take you 20 minutes, 30 minutes of your time to do, no biggie. So you can always do that. I wish we did have time though. I'm going to document querying is something we're going to do next week with jQuery anyway. So we're going to be doing plenty of that. Okay. Let me just go over the homework. Okay. I did ask that you start working on Free Code Camp. Okay. Free Code Camp is a great site, and it allows you to really kind of just work through small snippets. Like, this stuff is so easy to do. The beginning stuff is really easy too. Console log, and it's like console log. It's like next. Like, you can bang these things out as you're watching like Game of Thrones. You know, like Game of Thrones, and be like, bang this stuff out. Like, you don't even have to think about some of the stuff. It's so easy. Create a function. Like, this one's like writing reusable function. It tells you what to write. Like, you gotta rewrite. Like, it's really intuitive. What I want you to do for this particular one, let me go back to the Free Code Camp, go to the curriculum. I want you to complete everything up to, in the JavaScript section, so I'm going to the JavaScript section, basic JavaScript, everything up to write reusable JavaScript functions. All of that, right? I mean, we got Monday, right? Whatever. Like, I just want to push you to do it. What I'll do is I'll assign stuff and I'll just be like, hey, just work through the material. And you know what? People don't work through the material. So I'm giving you like a thing to shoot for, and they go over arrays and they go over stuff that we haven't covered. But once again, they express it. They'll give you examples. Just try your best. If you get stuck, you know, may seem like a lot. This beginning stuff is like declare JavaScript variables. Like, that's all I had to do, I think. Create a var keyword. Look at the name. Run the test. Oh, no. I have to do more. Okay. So work through that. I also would like you to work through the jQuery section too. jQuery. What's that? Link to homework in Slack? Yeah, I can. I mean, it's in the Trello board, but I can link it. And so here's the section for jQuery. Bunch of things for jQuery. Start working through this. If you don't finish it, you don't have to finish it. There's a lot of stuff here for jQuery. But jQuery, you start on Monday, Tuesday, and that's what we're going to use for like the next 4 solid weeks. So I want you to be up to speed on that. There's also this this video. This guy Wes Boss. You know, it's a lot, right? I feel like, my God, when is he going to stop with the homework? You're gonna have to create an account. Let me just create. Let me log in. And some really good stuff. All right, save it. What did he have? I think it's JavaScript 30. So I'm gonna go back here. Let me see if I can copy and paste this. I think it should take me directly. Yeah, takes me directly into the video. And the video that I want you to see is the 14 must-know dev tool tricks, developer tools. We're going to spend a lot of time in developer tools, okay? So I want you to kind of just get used to using the developer tools. And I think the video is what? Like 9 minutes maybe? I don't know. It's not really that long. 10 minutes, I think. I think it's like 10 minutes right here. Try working through that. These are really, I'm just trying to get you more efficient working with JavaScript, watching these. He does an awesome job of this material.
It's going to run a function called make green, and this function.
And I don't think those are the 12 tools, because he wouldn't be doing this in developer tools. So the 14 must know, this is it. I don't know, is it blank? I don't think it is blank. Cool. And that's it. There's some bonus reading. I highly doubt anybody's going to get to this. There's some free reading out there. If you don't know JavaScript, you assign this to the day class. it's a lot of JavaScript. Okay? Muchas JavaScript. Okay. Since it is the first class of JavaScript, I'm going to ask everyone, do fill out the exit ticket. Give me your feedback. How do you feel about JavaScript? We're going to be doing much, much more hands-on and much more context as well. Okay? So, look at that. Heather slacked it out. Heather's on point. Not even here. And she's doing an amazing job, Heather.
No, I have to go, but it's not hard.
Does it quit changing that?
This is a really small world.
Yeah, at that time.
Sweet. All right. Just wait till you get it. So just because you're interested in it, this is what the day class is doing tomorrow. They're writing algorithms. First hour, they have to come up with the code to output a chessboard in the console. They have to write something that converts this series of strings to this series of strings. And then they have to flatten an array using recursion. And most of them will struggle with all of it. Some of them won't finish it. They'll get through, and they're going to do paired programming too. So they're going to be paired with someone working through the problems, and most of them won't get through it. But they have to be pushed. Like, this is what you need to know. You didn't finish it now, finish it later. You gotta finish it at some point.
Is that shared with someone with a class like that, or
What's that?
is it like a normal thing to just push people to work together?
Paired programming is a really big thing out there. One of my students graduated, works at a company, and they do paired programming. Like, they don't code on their own, they pair program with someone. And it just makes for more efficient coding. Like, you're paying two people to do what would be the job of one, but what if we could get the job done better, faster, more intuitively? Two people are in tune with what's being written, understanding the logic, right? They're both learning from each other. Then that means I have stronger developers in my, and then we can pair them up. So we try to do that here because these algorithms are really hard, and some people, they just don't get it. And other people that we pair them up with are some people that have like the math degree, and they're like, oh yeah, let's do this. And so depending on who you get paired with, you'll be like, oh wow, like they really explained it to me. So part of learning this stuff is being able to explain it to someone else. Like, really showing that you understand something is having the ability to explain it to somebody else. If you can't explain it, then you don't really know it. Like, you know it because you did it, but explaining really internalizes all of that logic.
When you say explaining it to someone, do you mean like in the literal, like computer science sense, or using like an outside example to try and relate to it without work as well?
I would say like using as many examples as you would need to